Hello, Donnie.
Hi, Shirley.
It's so good to see you and to begin a conversation about grandparenting, especially grandmothering, with someone who has not only been a grandmother for quite a while, but who has been the champion of grandmothers and a networker of many people, probably around the world by this time, in an organization called the GaGa Sisterhood. So first off, would you please explain what that lovely name means?
Well, it started back in 2003. My daughter invited me to witness the birth of her first child, and I felt so grateful. So I had the prime spot at the foot of my daughter's bed, right next to the midwife. And when that little baby entered the world, I swear, she had her eyes open and she looked at me and I looked back at her.
Oh, wow.
And I just leaped in the air and went totally gaga. So that's where the gaga came from.
Yeah.
And then as I got into my role and I started to see what it was like to be a grandma, one of the things I noticed that it was so different from how I'd raised my daughter. She was doing attachment parenting, which I'd never heard of, wanting to carry the baby around all the time and sometimes complaining about how tired she was. And I would think, well, I can kind of guess why, but I didn't say anything. But that's when I started thinking, I need to talk to other grandmas. I want to find out what their experience is like. So I had just retired from Foothill College, where I was a counselor for 15 years, community college, and I love my job. And I said at my retirement party, I'm going to start the GaGa Sisterhood. And I'm going to invite all the grandmas I know to come over to my house and start a conversation about what it means to be a modern grandma. So I finally did that in December of 2003. And I remember it vividly. There were 15 of us sitting in a circle for several hours. And I had an agenda. We talked about what our grandchildren called us and how we got that name and how far did we have to travel to see our grandchildren. And then how did we get along with our grandchildren's parents? And that was probably the juiciest conversation of all. And that's when the GaGa Sisterhood was born.
Yeah. And from there you went in, this was before we had YouTube, this was before a lot of things. I think you actually were a pioneer in the field because
well, thank you.
One of the things that we're seeing an explosion right now of blogs and podcasts and books and references and even research in the field that I think is probably following the same curve of the parenting conversation, research, books, etc., resources that came about maybe after books like What to Expect When You're Expecting, and lots of people in the fields of psychology and especially developmental psychology began to publish. I think that same thing is going to be happening, but you, or the person who out of your own joy and out of your own need or desire, I should say.
Well, all of it. And curiosity.
Yeah.
Curiosity definitely drives me.
Yeah.
Yes, so, I'm very proud of the fact that I started something unique and have sustained it.
Yes.
For over 18 years.
Yeah, it's going to make you a mother of the movement, I think.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind as you were talking about theories and relationships and things, I think one of the biggest misconceptions that grandmas have when they come into the relationship is that it's all about the grandchild. And it's really not. That's what we're wishing for. But really, the most important relationship is with the grandchild's parents, your adult children. And getting that relationship strong and developing mutual respect and trust is something that should really even begin before the child is born. And that was kind of the message of my book, and what one of the things that I've really emphasized a lot in the GaGa Sisterhood is, how is your relationship with your adult child?
Why don't you mention the name of your book and tell us a little bit of how it arose?
I just happen to have it right here.
All right.
It's a little handbook. See, it's pretty small, and it's called When Being a Grandma Isn't So Grand. Now, I'm a person who doesn't sugarcoat things. And when I first wrote this, I thought this title could be off-putting, because a brand new grandma is not going to be thinking, oh, is it not grand sometimes? But the reality is that it can be, and it can be right in the beginning. So that the subtitle of my book is 4 Keys to Love Your Grandchild's Parents. And I just wanted to put something out that was easy to read, that covered all the bases of the grandparent relationship, particularly with the adult child. And so the subtitle, 4 Keys to Love Your Grandchild's Parents, is an acronym. So the love is, L is learn the parent's language. Just like I didn't know what attachment parenting was, I had to learn that. And I had to be curious in a non-judgmental way. And once I learned it, I thought, wow, that's a great concept. Different, but great. And then O is own your purpose, your shared purpose. So a lot of grandparents want to be involved. And what I say is, remember, it's teamwork, and you're not the captain. You have to be a player, and a good player, and follow the rules. It's so important to follow the rules. And then you will be part of that team. So own your shared purpose. And then V is value the parent's hard work. I think so often parents feel insecure, especially in the beginning when they're brand new parents. And anything we can do to help them boost their morale, their sense of confidence, by just saying, oh, you do such a great job of quieting the baby when she's having a tantrum. So value and appreciate the hard work. And then E is something I learned from my daughter, empathy. So empathize, empathize, empathize. Parents do not want advice. They want empathy. And it took me so long to understand, to just say, oh, that must be so hard. Because that doesn't feel very adequate to me. So often we're advice givers, but they don't want to hear advice. They want to just know that you understand and empathize with them.
It sounds like your work as a counselor before you became a grandma has turned out to be very helpful to you now.
It has. And also my first career was a speech pathologist. And so I became a trained listener.
Yes.
And listening is such an important skill in any relationship.
Amen. And that's another theme that I like to draw on, is the continuation of our vocation. I think grandparenting is a vocation, but if we're fortunate, it draws on all the things we learned in our lives beforehand. I too was a teacher, and an English teacher and a writer and a speaker. And I know that stories and storytelling are essential to building relationships also. And so those are things I love to do with my grandchildren, and they seem to love to do them too. But it's not like grandparenting is starting over. It's just continuing, but going deeper and having an opportunity to imagine what will remain after we're gone. And so those are the things that I look for when I listen to other grandparents. I like to imagine how what they are giving to their grandchild is consisting of things that were given to them and are part of who they are and have been part of who they are for a long time.
Well, one of the things I just want to say about what we've been given, not only through our jobs, but through our families. And
Yeah.
my grandmas were alive until I was 40.
Oh, wow. Two of them.
Both my grandmas.
Wow.
My maternal grandma lived to be 93, Grandma Amelia, and my second granddaughter's named after her.
Uh-huh.
And then my paternal grandma, Grandma Gertrude, no one named anybody after her.
Some names come back and some names don't.
No, that one didn't. But my two grandmas were very different. My Grandma Gertrude was what worked as a mature woman. I learned so much from her. But my Grandma Amelia was my best friend. And we spent a lot of weekends together. We did outings in San Francisco. We rode the cable car. We went downtown. We went to the Saturday matinees, and she was just a fun grandma. And she and I traveled from San Francisco to New York and back on the train when I graduated from high school.
Wow. How wonderful to have those experiences. So she was alive when you became a mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so what was her relationship to your daughter? And you have one daughter, two daughters?
I have one daughter and one son.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
For your children.
Yeah. So I remember my two grandmas were taking care of Deborah when she was 2, Deborah, my daughter. She got her head stuck in this little rocking chair that she was like through the arm of the rocking chair. And so my grandmas went running out into the street to find somebody to help them get Deborah uncaught from the rocking chair.
What was the solution?
I think it was pretty easy. I think they just maybe panicked a little bit. That was a story that I love telling. I'm not sure I think I have told my grandchildren that. This is pretty funny. But wow. we took 4 generation. We took 4 generation vacations. I have a wonderful picture of when my grandma Amelia turned 89 and Deborah turned 2. And there's a picture of me and my mom, my grandma, and Deborah. And then just last month, I have another 4 generation picture. My mom turned 99.
Oh.
Yeah. My mom turned 99, and I had my daughter and my 2 granddaughters and me. So another 4 generation picture.
Wow. Did you put that up online?
I did. I put it on Instagram.
Okay. Well, maybe we can find it. And what is your Instagram handle so that people might be able to follow you?
At GaGa Sisterhood.
Okay, well.
And that's how you and I met, Shirley, on Instagram. Yes. I love Instagram.
I do too. And I'm only beginning to use it the way I think it's intended to be used. I was on Facebook earlier and even Twitter before Instagram, and probably Facebook is the one that has felt most natural to me. But as I observe other writers and people in the field, Instagram seems to have taken over with its easy accessibility and just being a place where everybody goes to find out what's
it's
happening.
Engaging. It's so much more engaging than Facebook. I get a lot more comments, and I meet people and I get to know there. And there's a lot of grandmas on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really fun.
Good. Well, I will be following you in part to see how you use Instagram so that I can learn better myself. So we have talked a little bit about how the sisterhood got started. How do you sustain your energy for a project like this? You know, a lot of people, and you're no longer the grandparent of very young children.
No.
You now have adult or near
Well, I
adult?
have a freshman in college,
Mm-hmm.
a freshman in high school, and a second grader.
Okay.
My daughter has 2 girls and my son has a girl.
Okay. So I'm also the grandmother of 3 and a 2 and 1 combination. And I now have, well, mine range in age from 4 to 11. But I already see a new phase of grandparenthood before me as we have these preteen 9 and 10-year-olds beginning to, well, actually one of them is in the junior high. The junior high goes down into 5th grade. So this is a whole beginning of a new relationship.
Yeah.
And I could imagine that when they're in college, I don't know if I will have that same, at least the same new energy that I have had ever since they were babies. So how did you sustain your interest, and what parts of it evolved over time to keep you really engaged?
And do you mean in engagement in the GaGa Sisterhood or as a grandma?
Well, actually, let's talk about both.
Okay. Yeah, because they're different.
They're different, but
Yeah.
I'm interested in both.
Well, it's so interesting because I have been, and still am, a very involved grandma. My late husband and I traveled up to my daughter's every other week for many, many years. She lives about 2 hours from us, and we'd spend the night for a couple nights. And we just did everything with our granddaughters. We went to all of their classes from the day they were born. And I was at the second birth of the second one too. So very involved with them. And then as they got older, I could see what was going to happen. And I had to adjust. It was a big adjustment. And I've told grandmas, you be sure you have a life beyond being a grandma.
Yeah.
And so that's where the GaGa Sisterhood has come in, because first of all, in the beginning of the GaGa Sisterhood, we were only one group of women in Silicon Valley, and we met in person every other month in members' homes. But then when the pandemic happened, we had our first Zoom meeting in April of 2020, and it just opened up so many possibilities. I never had grandmas from all over the country, and then suddenly I did, and it's been wonderful. And what sustains me in the GaGa Sisterhood is my passion for the role of grandma and meeting other grandmas.
Yeah.
I just love hearing other grandmas' stories. It's like I could spend hours talking to other grandmas. And I feel that other grandmas feel that way too.
Yeah.
We're curious, and we want to share ideas, and we want to look at pictures and just enjoy that love.
Well, I had the privilege of being on 2 of those Zoom calls, one with Amanda Gorman's grandmother, which was quite a catch. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that was delightful. And then the most recent one, not the most recent, but one in December with the grandpa.
Yes.
What was his name? I'm sorry.
Grandpa Wynn.
Grandpa Wynn. He was amazing, and I was able to use 2 of his suggestions many suggestions over our Christmas vacation when we had the whole family in Orlando, and they were both really great suggestions for our family time together. And so the conversation was fun. He was amazing. I enjoyed the questions and repartee with the other grandmothers. And then after actually putting into practice some of the really good ideas, I can see how reinforcing it is to keep on adding to the expertise of the whole and sharing what's been learned, far and wide with other people, quite beyond the scope of any Zoom call.
Yeah.
So without the pandemic, would you never have gone into Zoom?
Probably not, even though Zoom existed. And I think I did Zoom once before the pandemic, but it was a bit awkward and different. But, a lot of people don't really understand the GaGa Sisterhood until they experience it as you did.
Yeah.
Because there are many facets to it. So I have my blog, my website, which I post on weekly. I put a blog up. And then I have a monthly newsletter that I do. And then we have our meetings. And last year we had 12 meetings. We met every month. And not only did we have Bertha Gorman, who I was so proud to introduce, Amanda Gorman's grandmother. And at Wynn, as you mentioned, he was our first grandpa ever in the GaGa Sisterhood to speak, and everybody loved him. Some women said, "Oh, I wish he were my grandpa." And then we had Paula Spahn, who's a wonderful columnist from the New York Times, and she wrote a book called the Nana Diaries.
The
Bubby Diaries. Thank you. Yeah, the Bubby Diaries. She was great.
Yeah.
We also had a mom, Carrie Byrne, whose specialty is the long distance grandparent. So her website is helping grandparents who are long distance. And she was a wonderful resource. So we have the tagline of the GaGa Sisterhood is where grandmas bond, brag, and benefit. So the meetings are where we benefit, where I like to share information. And of course, on my website. We do some bragging, but we don't do as much bragging as we used to when we were in person. And then bonding. So many friendships have been made in the GaGa Sisterhood when we met in person. And one of the challenges that I really want to work on this year is how do we connect the grandmas around the country to each other in between meetings? And that was actually a question brought up by my January speaker just a week ago, Randy Bloom, who talked about the health benefits and longevity of volunteerism. She was an amazing speaker. And in the breakout sessions, while everybody else was talking, she and I had a chance to talk together. And she said, "Well, how do you keep your members connected in between the meetings?" And I said, "I'd really like to find a way." Because I think there are so many things that we'd like to talk about. And I have a meetup group. I have 300 people in my meetup. And I don't know if that's the way to do it, but I would really like to have more connection.
And you have a Facebook page, right?
I do have, I have a Facebook page, yeah, but I don't have a Facebook group.
Okay. Well, those can be good places to connect after, a single event. And of course, if we do get back to in person, that gives the people who are lucky enough to be close to a place where they can meet in person, will make their own connections, and you don't have to facilitate. That'll just happen.
And that has happened over the years. Many people have gone hiking and traveling and gotten together for dinner. And So I'm trying something new this year because we are a membership organization.
Mhm.
And so we have two types of meetings that we're going to have this year, hopefully. Every other month, starting in January, we are having our Zoom meetings. And so I've got
Mhm.
speakers set up all the way through July for this year.
Mhm.
And then for our local members who live in the San Francisco Bay Area, I call it, we're going to have in-person meetings. Well, that's already not happening next month because it
Yeah.
just feels too soon to meet in person. But the goal is when things hopefully return to some semblance of normal, that we can meet again, and maybe it won't be February, but maybe it'll be April. And
Mhm.
then we'll have our in-person meetings, and we'll have some conversations that are just open-ended where we get to know each other. We do member mixers a lot in when we used to meet, where I provide 5 sort of thought-provoking questions, and we break up into small groups and go in different parts of a person's home, sit in
Mhm.
little corners and answer those questions. And we did a member mixer on Zoom, and it was really fun.
Mhm. Yeah, small groups work well in Zoom.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, well, great. It sounds like you have lots of plans and even some challenges ahead of you. Um, let's see. You say on your website, I've been on a mission to connect with other grandmas and explore what it means to be a modern grandma. We're in a new era of grandmotherhood. We have more time, technology, and talent. My mission is to inspire grandmas to tap into these resources so we keep growing along with our grandchildren and children and stay connected with them. I find that fascinating on so many levels. One is the whole idea of modern grandparenting. And I'm going to put that aside for the moment, but I'm going to ask, how has the pandemic impacted the role of grandparent from your vantage point as the head of a network for grandmothers?
I like to say that it's been in some ways a silver lining,
Uh-huh.
because we've had to get more creative in how we can connect with our grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, we've got new ways. And I probably once a week get some company writing to me asking me if I would like to promote their new product of a new way to tell stories with their grandchildren or
Yeah.
have phone calls with their grandchildren. So we have Zoom, which we didn't really think about too much. We have FaceTime, which we had there are different ways to do FaceTime, where you can use a portal where you get a much bigger picture. And we have to learn the technology. Like I do a lot of texting with my 2 older granddaughters. And one thing that I didn't do, so my youngest granddaughter, Sophia, lives in Southern California, and I used to go visit her every other month. But when the pandemic happened, I couldn't. And every single weekend since the pandemic, we've had a Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been so much fun. She's a very good artist, so I call her my art teacher, and she gives me art lessons
Uh-huh.
every Saturday or Sunday when we talk. It's really fun. And so we've had to adapt, but in that need to adapt, we've gotten more creative.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, and of course, this will all be studied and we'll have statistical evidence for it, but my hunch is that there are more 3 and 4 generation connected families now than before, even though for a time we were all disconnected. But it seems as though the pandemic, well, first of all, it's been so hard on young parents.
Mhm.
And if grandparents, as soon as it's been possible to be together and to be supportive, and I'm sure financial support and other ways have helped parents to feel the empathy for their situation. And grandparents have found ways to make it possible to help with the new kind of schooling and the new kind of daycare that it has been challenged by the pandemic. I'm sure that, we also hear about domestic abuse and things like that. So I'm sure that negative things have happened as a result of the pandemic as well.
Oh, yeah.
But my guess is that on the whole, grandparents have found ways to reach out and be helpful.
I know of many examples.
Yeah.
One friend of mine moved from Boston out here, retired from her job as a doctor, and is taking care of her 1-year-old granddaughter 5 days a week.
Wow. Yeah.
And she started a year ago.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing that's happened, because we all know of people who are leaving jobs and people who are moving. And in my family's case, our daughter moved here to Pennsylvania, and it's one of the reasons why I moved as well. And now I have at least one grandchild that I can be in very close contact with. And, every other weekend we have her over her night and do lots of other things together with her family. And would we have done it without the pandemic? I'm not sure. But I'm glad that we've had this outcome, at least for a very tragic event in world history. And there are these silver linings that happen. Let me go back to that original nudge of asking you about modern grandparenting. You've used that term even in the origin of the GaGa Sisterhood. How is grandparenting different today than it was, say, one generation ago, and certainly even more so than 2 or 3 generations ago? But what is it about modern grandparenting that makes an organization like GaGa Sisterhood so beneficial?
Well, I think back to my grandma, my own grandma, and then my parents as grandparents. And one of the things that was different is just that there wasn't the passion for being a grandma. It wasn't spoken as much. I think it was just sort of, oh yes, I'm a grandma.
Yeah.
But everything about the baby boomer generation has kind of exponentially grown and identified and kind of claimed something unique.
Yeah.
So I think that when I think of modern grandparenting, I think of grandmas who look different. We look younger. We wear different kinds of clothes. I will say though that my mom has passed down sweaters to my daughter and granddaughters that they like. My mom was and still is a good dresser. She likes clothes a lot.
Yes.
But I think of my grandma, who was a very spry and energetic woman, but she looked older. So grandmas look different. We act differently. I think we are more energetic. We're definitely more tech savvy. And I think we're more conscious. We're more conscious of our behavior. Hopefully, that's what I think. That's the goal, to be more conscious, to be more communicative. And this is from a very small group that I'm making this generalization. But these are some of the things that I think make us different. And we've actually had conversations at meetings in how are we different from our own grandmas and our mothers. If we didn't know our grandparents, how are we different that our parents were as
Yeah.
grandparents.
Well, in my case, my grandmothers were both farm women.
Mhm.
And so in my lifetime, I've traversed all of kind of economic history of the world from the feudal period to the current day. And all of those different ways of being in these relationships, because the old way was for children to, they have the truism of being seen but not heard, and you have the idea of children being valuable because they can work and make an economic contribution from a very young age, and that's the feudal system.
Yeah.
And I knew there was love in my family, but there wasn't, like you could say, there wasn't passion there for the role.
Yes.
There was respect for the role, but not
yeah.
passion. And there was a lot taken for granted. The children were just going to follow along. You know, the adults were leading the way, and the children could, while they were very young, they could play, but they could go out and play, you know, go play.
Yes, yes. The good old days.
Yeah, it has been a sea change, and very interesting to observe. And I think you have done a great job of summarizing and continuing to notice what grandmothers today are experiencing, what their challenges are, how they hope and dream for their grandchildren.
You know, there's one other thing that I just like to pop in here for a minute and say that the stereotype of a grandma also is very slowly changing, but this is something that is part of our culture, is the ageism.
Yes.
That is so inherent and so unconscious in our
Where
culture.
do you see it?
Well, when you still see so many images of grandmas with a shawl, I'm wearing a shawl today.
How about one of these?
Sitting in a rocking chair with, you know, a kind of
yes.
And I'm saying gray hair, but you know, it's becoming more trendy to have gray hair now. It's people are, one of the people I follow on Instagram is Celebrate the Gray. And I just want to say, this is my own hair color. I do not dye my hair.
Wow.
So,
you are one of the few.
A lot of my GaGa friends have let their hair go to natural.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the stereotype of the, you know, the little old lady.
Yes.
And we need to change that. We need to show who we are. And one of the people I had last year was Melissa Davey, who wrote I think it's called the 60 Project. And she did a documentary. She retired from her job at 60-ish, and she made a documentary that she'd never made a film before. And it's about women over 60 who are making a difference. And she spoke to our GaGas earlier in the year and gave a fascinating presentation, and we all watched the documentary before. I'll have to look up the correct title, but it's something about the 60s,
Yeah.
And
there's a group, there are two women in New York who've started Luster. Have you heard of that?
No, I've not heard of that.
I will have to look up their names. Karen is one of them. They were both high-flying career women. Now they're I don't know if they're grandparents, because they don't focus on grandmothering, but they focus on vitality and stereotype breaking of the
Uh-huh.
older woman.
Yeah.
And they have all kinds of adventures. There's a lot of travel involved in their Instagram, and they also are good at introducing other people to New York City, which is their home, and very determined not to let retirement mean, resorting to the stereotype of the older woman. So they're very creative and fun, and I'll mention them in my post that includes this recording. I think we've covered the questions that I outlined for today, and I see that we have pretty well reached the time I thought would be good for this kind of interview. Do you have any suggestions for grandparents that you'd like to share as a kind of introduction to all that you've learned over these years?
Well, one of the things that I always advise new grandmas or grandmas to be is to sit down with your adult children and talk about expectations. Have a real honest conversation. What do you wish for yourselves as parents, and how can I be involved in that? And what role would you like me to take? And may I tell you what my wishes are and my expectations? And see if you can find some mutual agreement, so that you really start out with an honest conversation. And to say, my wish is to respect you, to appreciate you, and to do everything I can to be involved as much as you would like me to be.
I think that's great advice, and probably needs a refresher every once in a while, but it's a wonderful way to begin. And like everything else, if we begin with open and honest intentions, and they're shared, we can expect wonderful things to happen. And we can all say GaGa.
Yeah, it's such a great feeling.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I love about being in the GaGa Sisterhood is just how you and I connected today. There's this shared understanding and appreciation of who we are at this time in our lives and how fortunate we are.
Yes. Amen. Well, it's been a blessing to be with you. Thank you so much. And I know you'll be having some new Instagram followers.
Good. And it's my website is gagasisterhood.com. And so, yeah, take a look. And I've got a monthly newsletter, all kinds of fun things.
Right. Well, I know that there will be many who can benefit, and we'll try to find as many as possible to send your way. And I want to be one of them.
Shirley.
Thank you so much, Donnie. Bye-bye.
Bye.